Thank you so much for your energy that you bring here, and we're going to have a lot of fun over the next 4 or 5 hours, I think I have for this keynote, if that's good. The MDC team, I don't have 4 or 5 hours, I've got a little less than an hour. But the MDC team was really fun. They were good at prepping me in terms of what I should say and what I should do, and the key takeaway that they had for this speech was, can you help people really think differently and act differently? And it made me think about this quote, it's one of my favorites, that when an individual does the same thing over and over and expects a different outcome, that's called insanity. When an organization does it, that's called strategic planning, right? So how can we think about a new way to work? And it's not necessarily about doing more, it might be about doing less. And I want us to kind of change the habits around how we work and really focus on one of my favorite topics, which is simplicity, or how most of us like to think of it, which is killing complexity. And what I want to do is I want to give you a series of stories and examples of how you can make simplicity a habit. And so I think I'll dive right in and tell you a story about a company who has made simplicity, believe it or not, a reality. They're incredibly regulated, and you know them very well. How many people here interact with UPS personally or professionally during the year? Right? They touch just about everybody. And not long ago, they realized, you know, the way that we work is really complex. Not that they're regulated, but just to kind of give you a feel, they operate with 94,000 vehicles on the road, hundreds of airplanes, and logistics is the way that they live and die. And so they made a really simple change that had a huge impact positively on their business. And here it is. No more short shorts on their drivers. Right? I'm kidding, that was not it, but I really wanted to show you this picture. And when you Google UPS short shorts, those are the first 2 that come up. And look how proud he is, isn't that fantastic? They made a different simple change, and it was from the algorithms of their logistics team. And they decided the biggest impact they could have to speed up their business, because they're all about speed equals happiness for them, is no more left turns. So they rewired many of the drivers' routes. It used to be all of them, now it's many of them, to have no more left turns. Why? Left turns have a lot of impact. When you think about it, they're the most dangerous part when you drive, right? You go into oncoming traffic and you're more likely to have an accident, so that's a problem. You're idling a lot, so you're burning a lot of fuel. It's not great for the environment, you're giving off emissions. And every left turn adds 30 to 45 seconds to every drop-off, and that adds up. So they decided no more left turns. They implemented this and made drivers' routes a series of right-handed loops. What was the impact? They saved 10 million gallons of gas a year. They took 100,000 metric tons of CO2 out of the atmosphere, which is the same thing of taking 21,000 trucks off the road. And even more so, they shaved 6 to 8 minutes on average off of every driver's route. Why? That's incredible. That's the impact of simplicity. That's what it looks like. That's what it feels like. Right? Customers are happier. They get their packages sooner. The drivers are happier because the customers are nicer to them, and it's better for the bottom line. So simple things you can do that have a big impact. Let's see how we can do that with you. So 2 things that I want to talk about today. The first is inspirational stories of how you can make simplicity your new operating system. And the second thing I want you to think about today is, how can I feel a little uncomfortable with this? I want to make you uncomfortable with this. And the reason why is I want to see your role. I want you to recognize your role in creating complexity every day. You do it and you don't even realize it. Most of it is self-imposed and completely unnecessary, but we do it and we don't even realize it's happening. So if I make you feel uncomfortable, there's a reason for that. It challenges the way that you think about how you have to work. And how we work right now is way too complex. So let me give you a statistic about this. So there was a great study that came out. This was 2 years ago now from SAP. And they do a lot on the future of work. If you haven't read this study, Google it and read it. It's great. And they surveyed about 2,500 CEOs. And they asked them, what is your biggest challenge right now? So they listed a whole bunch of challenges. And here's what happened. 70% of the people that they surveyed listed their #1 challenge as complexity. And they thought it was only getting worse. Now, the first thing that probably comes to your mind is, okay, complexity, that's really going to hurt the bottom line. But really the problem with complexity, and here's the mind shift for you, is yes, it hurts the bottom line. But the issue with complexity is the enemy of meaningful work. It holds us back from driving value, from innovating, from creating growth, from bringing on the people that were there to do more meaningful things in the first place. It's the enemy of meaningful work. So rather than telling you about complexity, I want to show you what I mean and our role and how we do it. So I'm going to do a warm-up exercise with everybody. Can you put anything in your hands down on the table? Push your chairs back, and let's stand up for a minute. Here we go. Show of hands, how many people were in a lens session this morning? Yeah, you got a little taste of some of the interactivity that we do at our company. We like to show, not tell. So here's what we're going to do. Let me just get you warmed up quickly. What I want you to do is I want you to pat your head, rub your stomach, and click your heels. Let's just try that. Everyone just got really serious, like, I can do this. I can do this. All right, everybody got it? Now keep going. Let's keep going. This is for me, really, is all this is. Okay, let's stop. How many people here, just by show of hands, were able to do all three at once? Okay. That's not what I asked you to do. I asked you to pat your head, rub your stomach, and click your heels. This is a great example of how you are conditioned for complexity. And the older you get, the more that happens. So two things really happened here that you can translate back to work. So one of the things we like to do is we like to multitask, right? Even though the science proves that doing each task individually would get us better results than if we had done them all together. Multitasking. The second thing that happened is we elevate everything to the same level of urgency. Every email, every meeting, every response, every report, everything has to get done. And we create false urgency. So this is that self-imposed and unnecessary. That's the bad news. Here's the good news. Much of complexity is behavioral and individual, and it's within our control. So think about it. Simplicity is something, a skill that we all have. We just need to really turn it on, and that's what I'm going to talk about now. So let's sit down and let's dive in a little bit more. Now, just so you know, that is something you can do at your next staff meeting that you have. Make everyone feel really good about themselves. Self-imposed and unnecessary. Okay, so why are we doing this? And I just want to give you a little bit of background. For me, so I have an innovation company, and we do training, and we're located out of New York City. And I've got a small group there, and I've got trainers that go around the world to teach change and innovation. That's what we do. How do we get more people open to change? How do we get them to think more innovatively? How can we actually help them kill complexity? And I'll tell you, about 5 years ago, my trainers were coming back more and more often saying that the gigs weren't as much fun. And you know, as the owner of a company, that's not great because you want your people to be engaged in the work that they do. And so we delved into it a little bit more. And the feedback that we got was the people that were bringing us in, leaders like yourselves, to teach change and simplicity to their teams, right? Come on in, teach my guys. I want you to really paint a picture of the future for us. Those are the people that were pushing back on us from doing it when we got there. They wanted change, but not that much change, right? We want to draw a picture of the future, but not that far, right? So what was happening? Something was holding them back. There was some resistance, there was some fear, there was some anti-risk taking that they weren't allowing us to do the job. And so I started asking the groups that I went out and talked to a very simple question to get at what might be holding them back. And here's the question I asked. What do you spend your day doing? I want you to think about that. Your everyday, day in, day out, what do you spend your day doing? Now shout out to me, what would you say? What do you do? Meetings? Emails? Okay. Those are the rumblings that I heard. Reports, great. It's only getting better. So what surprised me when I asked this question, and let's say I'll speak to anywhere between 75,000 to 100,000 people a year. Small groups, super large groups. And I asked the same thing. Shout out to me, what do you spend your day doing? It's never the uniqueness of the answers that surprises me. It's the absolute consistency of them. What do you spend your day doing? Surprise! I can predict what you're going to say. Meetings and emails, and then reports, and then it's these tactical things that really hold us back. And I don't know about you, but I don't have a single friend that wakes up in the morning, looks at their inbox, and says, I'm so popular, right? Right, it's not a brag thing. It's not what we do. So how do we change that, right? You're not popular, you're annoyed, right? You got to move past those feelings of frustration and futility that hold us back with all these time sucks, because that's what they are. So many of them. So what happens with these meetings and emails? So if you want to know some numbers, some research, this was a study that came out from Bain just over a year ago. And they researched what employees, the average employee, so this is usually up to about a VP level, what do they spend their average day doing? And here's how it broke down. In the first group, 45% of the time is spent in meetings. Does that sound about right? 45%-ish? The next group, or the next part of it, was 23% was spent emailing. Now, to be honest, when I read this research, I thought it would be the opposite, because I spend more time emailing than meeting, but I'm a smaller company. When you read the data, this is only between 9 to 5. So I think when you all of a sudden expand the hours, right, it's going to be a little bit more emailing than it is meetings. The next set here was 18% was spent doing unproductive work. Right, that's the social media that you never go on, I know, at work. That's also the time you spend walking in between meetings, which I also thought was not fair. And then the last bit here, 14% was spent doing real work. So think about that, that's 6.5 hours a week. So that's like my team coming to me, and they're here. They come to me and they go, you know what, tomorrow, Lisa, between 9, about 3:30, we've decided that's the day we're actually going to get stuff done. Nobody can do that, but that's what's happening. So how do we switch that up? Why is that occurring? The data also is not just what people do individually, but it's coming from the organization. And this is where you all are in charge. So we measure 6 times the metrics that we used to from the 1950s. That's obvious because now we have structured and unstructured data, the technology's better, et cetera, et cetera. However, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And we have to think about as leaders, when is enough? So if you used to measure 10, now you measure 60. That's a lot. And then even more so, the amount of governing structures, policies, procedures, all those things that make us feel better and more in control that have been put in place, they've increased between 50 to 350%. And the more regulated you are, that's you all, you're on that higher end. So why do you care? Right? Complexity is the enemy of meaningful work. What this really means is you can't compete, right? Because speed is greater than size. And there's a lot of organizations, especially in the financial services industry, that hope that you stay exactly as you are. They don't want you to change. They don't want you to speed up. They want you to keep banking on how you've always done business because they're going to make things simple for their customers. And that's how they put other people out of business. That's how they disrupt industries. And if you don't believe me, take a look at this. Here is a great slide that shows you, here are some billion-dollar businesses that are less than 15 years old. And these aren't just unicorns. You can't look at me and tell me that Netflix is a unicorn or that Uber is a unicorn. Even despite the problems, they're big. So think about this. These are companies that make it simple for people to do business with them. Uber makes it simple to get a car. Airbnb makes it simple for you to get a room. Dropbox makes it simple for you to get a file. Kickstarter makes it simple for me to get funding and start a new business. Netflix makes it simple for me to watch hundreds of crappy movies every Friday night, right? You guys have those family nights too, where everyone's excited to watch a movie, but then no one can decide and it devolves into like this huge fight, right? It always starts out so well. So these are people that make it simple to do things. Okay, you got it, right? We want to make things simpler. So here's the question. Why do you choose complexity? Why do I choose it every day? How do I break the habit? It's also a cultural thing. I want you to think about this as a culture, even in your personal life. Even in your personal life. 20 years ago, when someone came up to you and said, "How are you doing?" Your answer would probably be, "Great." Good, how are you? 10 years ago, someone comes up to you and says, how are you? You go, pretty good, how are you? Good, good. Now, if someone comes up to you and says, how are you doing? What do you say? Busy. Busy, very busy. How are you? I'm busy. And then the busy off begins. Do you have those friends? Right? Right? I'm busy. I had so many emails today. I had back-to-back meetings, right? I took 3 red eyes last night, right? No, you didn't. You always have that one friend that like takes it a little too far, right? Busy. I'm busy because if I'm busy, I'm valuable. I am valuable. I'm doing meaningful things. Or are you? So this is that trap. This is that societal thing. Right? We get it at work. We get it inundated from the media. We get it at home. We get it from our friends. I'm busy. You're busy. I'm busy. Too busy. Okay. No one's not busy. So this is that complexity trap. So as leaders, think about this. What do you value at work? I think most of us value more, not less. Right? I don't know anyone that gets promoted for doing less. They get promoted or get a bonus if they manage more people, more products, more geos. You get the idea. Very few, but there are companies now that are rewarding people for less, and that's a good thing. The other thing is about doing versus thinking. And I like to say that in most organizations, thinking is a daring act. And think about this. How many people here like to have to-do lists? Anybody here like to-do lists? Okay, I will fully admit, this is like a healing thing when I wrote this book for me, Physician, Heal Thyself. I love to-do lists so much and want to feel a sense of accomplishment that at the end of the day, I will recreate a to-do list of all the things I've done just so I can check them off, right? You know you do that too, right? But that's one of those habits I had to think about. That's not what is important. It's not about getting more done on your to-do list, right? It's not this. It's what should be on your to-do list in the first place. That's the mental shift. And we're going to talk about that. It's not about doing more on your to-do list. It's what should be on your to-do list in the first place. Because we're so busy doing the to-do list, we're into the doing, that it's hard to do the thinking. And I'll tell you a personal anecdote. My team doesn't even know this because I just flew in late last night. That shows you how you almost have to get back into the habit of thinking. And I'll tell you what I mean. So I was in Atlanta yesterday. I was giving a speech and I flew here last night. And I got to LaGuardia early in the morning. I had an early flight. And something happened at LaGuardia if you fly out of there a lot. And of course, it's all that like perfect storm. I can't get through, this line that I'm going into doesn't have pre-check. I can't get through the express line. It's backed up because they only have 2 lanes open because why should they have all 4, blah, blah, blah. I'm gonna miss my plane. I've never missed a plane. So I'm rushing, I'm calling the airline, hey, can you let the gate know, da-da-da. Okay, I'm counting the minutes, I'm gonna make this, you're gaming the system as you're getting through the line, I can do this, if I get my shoes off in time, and you keep running. I get up there, they've put me on a backup flight just to be safe so I can make sure I get to Atlanta, and I go to take my computer slave out of my bag to put it through the thing, and my computer's not there. Did you hear that? I know, that's what I said. Like, and it went through my mind like, you can only imagine, like, my heart's pounding, I'm gonna have a stroke, oh my God. And I'm thinking like, okay, you can do this. You're about simplicity, you can do this. And calm down, and I phoned my husband and I said, Brian, okay. And he's like, you forgot your computer. He saw it. I was there early, he goes, it's here. And I said, okay, here's what we're gonna do. I have to make this flight or I won't make my speech. You're gonna upload some files for me. I'm gonna land, I'm gonna download them, I'm gonna get on stage, and when I get off, you're gonna put my computer, please, take it to FedEx, where it will arrive at the Epic Hotel, here's where it is. He said, no problem. And all I could think of was, 1, oh my God, at least I found my computer. 2, I can't believe I did that. And 3, God, I had this list of things I wanted to get done on the plane. Now what am I gonna do? I didn't bring anything to read. All I have is a pad of paper. I've got my phone. So here, it's this catharsis. Do you guys do this? So now I'm just jerking around on the phone, doing like, woo-do-do-do-do. I'm really getting things done now. I've been through my email like 10 times. No one, you keep like refreshing. Did anyone else email me? Did anyone else email me? No one else has emailed me. I'm in the air. I can't get go in flight. What am I gonna do now? So I suddenly, once you settle down, like you get the shakes, you're all calm. And suddenly, I was forced to think. and you know all those big things on your to-do list that you don't get to because there's too many other little crappy ones that you have to do, I was doing the big ones on my list. And I will tell you, I got so much done, big stuff, thinking through like big positioning things. Do I really want to develop those different courses? How do I want to do that? What do I need to do skill-wise with my team to make sure that those things happen? Like the big things that I just, I'll get to it, I did it because I didn't have a choice. And I didn't have my distractions of my to-do list. I will tell you, I got my computer back this morning from the front desk, and it was a little bit of a bummer. You know, they came back, FedEx has arrived, your computer's here, and before I was thinking like, thank God, and now I was like, oh, now I gotta do email, right? So it was a habit change is what I'm trying to say, which is, you know, you always say, I wish I had more time to think, and then when you do you really know how to do it? I had to stop and think, what do I really want to, I need to get in that groove of how to actually attack it. So why is that important? The last thing on here is, when you're doing so much doing, you're internal. Right? You're trading the telescope for the microscope, and you're not focused externally on members, on value. And if you think that's a problem, it is, but you don't realize it until you lose members, or you hear about things in customer service complaints. And I'm going to give you an example just personally, because we all can talk about corporate situations, but really when it's personal, that's when you get mad, right? When it affects you personally. And I'll tell you the story about, it's now been a year and a half, and we remodeled our house, gut renovation, soup to nuts, all the floors. We lived in the house during it, and it was great. I will kid you not, it was great, but I have a very patient husband, so that's probably why. And we decided at the end of it, after it was all done, that we were going to redo the patio, because what's one more change order and it's only money, right? Who cares? Now we're broke. So I realized through this that on our credit cards, we have racked up over 1 million points, and we're going to have a nice patio. So this is not my patio. This is a patio on Pinterest that I used as inspiration. Just as you know, I've also pinned like dresses I'll never fit into, right? Desserts I'll never make that you want to see later. But this was one of those patios that I used as my inspiration. And so I went online and I started picking out amazing furniture, the fire pit, we were going for it. We were going to entertain, like, you know, you're envisioning like all these parties you're going to have, woo! And the bar outside, it's going to be great. And so I go online and I call the bank, they transfer the points to the company that I want to order the furniture from, and said, just so you know, it's over $20,000 worth of furniture, et cetera. That's fine. Okay, so I want to get my code because I want to purchase it online. I don't want to have to go to this place. And I said, can you just give me a code now that I've reimbursed my points? We can't do that. I said, can you send me a gift card for this amount? No, we can't do that. We'll send you gift cards, and they have to arrive in the mail. How long is that going to take? 2 to 3 weeks. You know, and I'm not going to tell you who this company was, but I will tell you that it was really frustrating for me when I went online and I said, why? And so I wait my 2 to 3 weeks. You know, I was all excited, you know, anticipation, you know, no matter how you try and make it sound great, it really kind of sucked. So next thing you know, the gift cards start to arrive. 200 $100 gift cards arrived at my house. 200 $100 gift cards. That is my daughter, and she's scratching off the silver. Yeah, you know, she felt like she was grounded, like it would have been better to take away the Xbox at this point, right? So she scratches off all the codes. Now, let's think about this. What was supposed to be an online purchase, because it's easy for me, that's why I bought all these points, got all this in the first place, took me an hour to scratch off codes, 2 hours to reload my order online. Why? Because you can only use 10 codes at a time, people. So you got to reparse out the order. So then we do that, and then we enter in all the codes and we buy it. So I'm now about 5-6 hours in on a purchase that should have been easier for me online. I don't want to work with these guys anymore because they didn't make it simple for me, they made it simple for them. Internal, not external. Right? So that's the cost of complexity. And you know what? They won't care. They heard from me, but they don't really mind until it becomes an issue. So what do we want to do? You get complexity. Why not simplicity? What do we need to do? Let me tell you some fun simplicity stories and give you tactics that you're going to want to use right away. So there's a great story that I tell about Scripps Healthcare. And Scripps, Chris von Gordner, who's the CEO of Scripps, they are always listed as one of the best places to work. And so when I started talking to him about my book, about Why Simple Wins, I said, do you even have a complexity case study for me? I thought he would be the simplicity case studies. And he said, no. I will be happy to share my story of where we've been and how we got there. And he was so great. He's so inspirational, and he's really a motivator. And he said, I'm going to see if we can tackle complexity in the hardest part of our hospital systems. And if we can do it there, we can scale it and replicate it. So he said, we're going to tackle complexity in our emergency rooms. And that's kind of ground zero, right? Because people can't die. Things have to process. You can't screw up in an emergency room. And so to start, you have to analyze where does the complexity happen. And here's what they found in their emergency rooms. The average person in their emergency rooms waited 8 hours to be seen. Anyone's been in the emergency room, it's not uncommon to wait a while, but that seems like a lot to wait a day to get seen. Except in extreme circumstances where there's triage, et cetera, they get seen right away. The average person has to see 4 people in the process. So you start with the admissions nurse, and then you go in and you see another nurse, and then you see another nurse. Now, by the way, these are all forms, so you're repeating the same information again, and then you finally see a doctor or a specialist, depending on when you get through the gauntlet. The 1 in 10 people left without ever seeing somebody. And so there were high customer service complaints. So they decided, here's what we're going to do. We're going to change the process, and we're not going to make it seeing 4 people, we're going to make it seeing 2. And so the minute that you get admitted, you see a doctor and you see a nurse. And they immediately decide, do you need to go right away into the emergency room, or can we put you off on a different path to see a specialist? Making this shift so they could just see 2 people at once that could make the decision, only have the information one time, they cut down the average wait time to less than 4 hours. To their knowledge, nobody left. And their revenues jumped more than 20% because word got out they were so efficient that they had to add more staff, and people from the outside neighborhood started coming to them versus other hospitals. So a simple process change, big difference in terms of simplicity. Well, let me give you another example that I think you can really relate to. How many people here use LinkedIn? Not to look for jobs, but just on LinkedIn, right? On LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a really great example that not long ago, in 2015, they were getting incredible customer service complaints because they were sending out too many emails. Do you remember this? Like they would send out every time, like you got a request or a group announcement or a posting to a new group or posting for a new job. You were just literally inundating your inbox. And so they made a simple change. This is when they launched their product, the Weekly Digest email, that you could click on and literally just get everything on one day a week at a certain time. Making that one change, they dropped their customer service complaints by 50%. Their outgoing email dropped by 40%, which saved them a ton of time. And their revenues jumped by more than 35% in the first year. A simple change of process, a huge impact. How could you do the same thing? Now, that to me is a great example of these guys really get simplicity. But who else is doing it, and what are the benefits? The benefits aren't what you think. And what I want to talk about is kind of above the iceberg and below the iceberg. Because most people think killing complexity is about the top. It's about the financials. I mean, look at the benefits you can get if you really embrace simplicity. So most people can charge a 6% price premium to be simple. Customers say, if you're simple to work with, I'll pay 6% or more just to work with you. That's pretty cool. You're 70% more likely to be recommended by customers. They're your best salespeople. And you waste less time. They've even documented that in some companies, McKinsey was doing the study, each meeting was costing a company more than $15 million in time and money and hours wasted. Eliminating that time that's wasteful can have a big impact. But here's the bigger thing I want you to think about. This is what really matters. It is a cultural and ethical thing. It's cultural and it's ethical. It's cultural because 30% more likely people are going to stay because they're doing the work that they care about. People have trust with you. They trust you because, like Progressive Insurance, well, you're going to show me your and your competitors' rates and I can make a choice. I can trust you. You have nothing to hide. And then the final one is you respect each other's time. And I want you to think about that. That's when I go out and I talk about killing complexity, what really gets people up in air. They say, you know what? Why do we get so mad when people waste our money, but we don't get the same level of upset when people waste our time. You're never going to get it back. Why is that? And I think we spend a lot of time trying to build cultures, right, where people are inspired, but I think that what we're doing is not building cultures of innovation. We're focusing on cultural aesthetics, right? You have those colorful walls, and you have the whiteboards in the room, and you have organic food in the cafeteria, and you have chairs that are shaped like hands, and all that kind of stuff. And if that's all that it took for people to really want to stay at work, Google would have a 100% retention rate. No one would leave. It's a wonderful place. But people do, because you know what? They want inspiring work environments, but you know what they really want? Inspiring work. That's what people want. So here's something to think about as a leader. If we get the work right, we get the culture right. If we get the work right, we get the culture right. If your culture is working on innovative projects and setting up new partnerships, meaningful work, that's your culture. If your culture is meetings and emails, that's your culture. How do we shift it? So let me tell you some companies that have done that. And just look a little bit about this on a continuum. So there's things you can do informally, and there's things that you can do formally. Depends on how much you want to do. But if you look at things like HBO and Google, they've established bureaucracy-busting committees that actually look at in between and within groups, what's the bureaucracy that's happening? And their job is to kill it. You've got people like Tesco who actively look at their SKUs that they have on shelves. And they go, you know what? We don't need 30 kinds of ketchup. Let's only offer 8. It's okay. You've got people like at P&G and GE that have actually made simplification part of their strategic pillars, and they have simplification teams. And if you move all the way up to Merck and Syngenta, they have teams that have chief simplification officers. How many people would love to have a chief simplification officer at their organization, right? So there's informal to formal. So here's what we're going to do. I want to show you some ways that you can take common sense and make it common practice. Because everyone looks at these things and they go, oh, we can do that. But do you do it all the time? Do you weed the garden once, or do you make it a practice? That's the thing with complexity. You've got to do it all the time. Get rid of it. So here's some things we're going to do. I'm going to give you 5 things that you can do to simplify. Just 5. And I want you to think about which one could you try when you go back to your organization. Just one. Okay, here's the first one. And this seems really obvious, but there's something more to it. It's where does the complexity live? Where are the areas that we could really simplify? And here's what I want you to do, either individually, it's great as a leader to do this, or with your team. I want you to make, on a piece of paper, a T-chart. I made them sexy clipboards here, but a T-chart. And on the left-hand side, what I want you to say is, these are the typical things I do, the typical tasks during a week. And on the right-hand side, I want you to say the desired work, what I want to be doing. And what typically will happen is you get everyone to list the typical tasks they do during a week. You can look at your calendar, you can keep a diary of it, it's up to you. Or just write them down. And here's what people typically say. They say, like, I'm analyzing data. I'm attending status meetings. Be specific. They say things like, I'm filling my calendar with fake meetings to get work done, right? I'm creating fake agendas for my fake meetings because someone actually decided to attend. Someone told me that at Merck. Isn't that funny, right? So I had to make up this status meeting that then they knew they shouldn't be there anyway. I didn't want to look like a jerk. Okay. So then what you do is you tell people on that list, circle the things that are valuable. You decide what valuable is. And what you find is they only circle a few things. And so of those things that aren't circled, how do you get rid of them? If they're not valuable, why are you spending your time on them? Okay, great. That's the first part. And then you say to people, all right, what do you want to be doing? And here's what's interesting. You know how people on your team, they go, well, I wish I had more time to think. Or I wish I could be doing more valuable work. And then you ask them what that means. People have a hard time defining it. They have a hard time defining it. This is a really great exercise to define what is meaningful work for our group and what do we want to be doing. And so ideally what you find on the left-hand side, it's internal stuff. On the right-hand side, it's external stuff. So it might be things like meeting with innovative tech partners that I've researched, or I'm discovering new business models that we should really be considering. right? The left is like painstorming, the right hand is brainstorming. How do you move from left to right? And so that's the first thing. Identify ways to simplify with a T-chart. Do it by yourself or do it with a team. Okay. Here's number 2. Killing stupid rules. How many people here, by show of hands, would like to kill some stupid rules at work? This is usually where people are like putting their feet up and they're trying to make a point. Killing stupid rules is really great, and I'll tell you why. As a boss, people won't believe that you're letting them do it. Because no one asks like, hey, what would you like to stop doing? Well, my God, where do I start? And so here's the question I want you to ask people. Do it at your next status meeting. Don't create another meeting to do it. Okay? If you could kill any 2 rules, kill or change any 2 rules that would make you more productive or innovative or simplify us, you can define it a little better. What would they be? And why would you get rid of them? Here's what happens. If you give people 50 minutes or even 30 minutes, and it's fun when you pair people up, by the way, because that kind of gets the juices flowing. Typically, when the time is up, people ask for more time. And they come up with a lot of stuff. By the way, when you do this, let me give you a little hint. You have to tell people a couple things. There's red rules and green rules. Red rules are things that are industry mandated, government regulated. You will go to jail if you got rid of those rules. Do not touch those rules. Everything else on the table is a green rule. But you only want to do this within your sphere of control. So, of course, if you're doing it with your executive leadership team, you can do it for your entire credit union. But if you're doing it with your marketing team, only do it killing rules within the team that you operate every day. Because otherwise you kind of get into a bigger, oh, if we could only change legal, if we could only change HR, I hate expense reports. Don't do that stuff. Okay, so within your sphere of control. And what's really interesting is how profound this is in ways you don't expect. Because people, yes, come up with rules, but they also come up with things that are really just assumptions or annoyances or things that you can get rid of in terms of a quick win. And I'm going to tell you a story which is really great. I was doing this with McGraw-Hill. And they're very conservative. And it's publishing, so it's a little stodgy. And they don't know whether they're in a groove or a rut sometimes. And what was really interesting is we did this thing with their HR team. And we were killing stupid rules. And everyone was coming up with all these kinds of rules. And we had them come up. And after we had brainstormed for a few minutes, they came up with over 300 rules to kill. 300. Short amount of time, 300 rules. Let's assume that half of those were redundant. That's 150 rules. All right, let's assume half of those were 75 rules. There were more than that, but just go with me. And we had them come up and we had them put them up on a 2x2. And on the left-hand side here was how easy or hard it would be to implement the kill of the rule. And on the bottom was how easy or hard, or how much impact it would be if you did it. So from low to high, how much impact would it be if you killed that rule? Of course, everyone puts their rule on a Post-it, and they come up and they place it on this 2x2. And sure enough, where does everyone put most of the rules? In the quadrant where it would be easy to kill it, and it would have a high impact. Right? Because of course it's not their rules, it's someone else's stupid rules that they want to kill. And so I stand up there with the SVP, and this is how it always goes. And you look up at the top quadrant. By the way, if you do this and you're a leader, you have to kill something or you're a complete jerk. You have to kill something. So be prepared and put your armor on, because usually it's your rules, right? And so that's a good learning lesson. So he stands up there and we see a lot of the commonalities. And there's this thing up there called the MOR that everybody is upset about, the MOR, the monthly operating report. Everyone hates it. It serves no purpose. Lighters going off in the room with the idea of killing the MOR, right? Oh my gosh. And so the leader I'm up there with says, I see that everybody's having an issue with the MOR. And of course, everyone's like, woo, all pumped up, like, woo, 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 we're going to kill this thing. And he said, just so you know, I created the MOR. Right? Ooh, like everyone's really like, Ugh. And so he said, but just so you know, I thought you guys wanted it. I thought you liked it, or you get so into it and it's organized and you turn it in and blah, blah, blah. And everyone's going, no, no, no. And he said, I'm not sure I feel comfortable getting rid of it. This gets to risk tolerance. But I'll pilot getting rid of it for 3 months. And if nobody misses it, we'll kill it. And 3 months later, it was gone. Pretty cool. So it doesn't have to be an all or nothing thing. So I want you to think about, if you could kill any rules with your team, what would they be and why? Okay, kill a stupid rule. All right, here's the next one. I want to have you better empower decision making. Now, what's interesting about this is so many people say that they want to make decisions, but then when you tell them to do it, they don't. Because a lot of times, and I'm going to get to what really drives complexity here, it's fear. So maybe rather than empowering, the word I should use is mandating. And I was working with this group with a risk agency, a ratings agency in risk. And I said, you really need to empower people to make decisions. And he got a little angry with me. And he said, please, please. I tell my team all the time to make decisions and they won't do it. And he said, so you know what I did is I made him do it. And I thought, you made him do it? And listen to this was great though. He said, so here's what I did at my next status meeting, because I was so tired of people telling me this. I said, his 10 reports, they meet every month. So he's a high guy. And he said, 10 reports, and I said, listen, I want you guys to make 2 decisions this month that you normally would have asked me to make. And we're going to report back next month and tell me what they were. And sure enough, of course, the first reaction from people is, what kind of decisions? How many decisions? Is it okay? And he's like, just make decisions. And he would get the occasional email from people of, can I invite so-and-so to the meeting? And he's like, that's a decision you can make without me. Sure enough, right, the first month, they come back into the conference room, 10 people, 20 less decisions that he had to make. Next month, he's like, I amped it up to 3, and I amped it up to 4, so people got more comfortable with it. And he said, you know what my metric for success was? Is that by the end of the year, I started having a lot of time on my hands, and I was actually feeling a little uncomfortable. So many people were making decisions without me. So how could you empower decision-making with your team and even mandate it? That it's okay to make decisions and you expect it from them. Okay, next one here, changing habits. I think one of the biggest issues with complexity is we don't realize, again, if we're in a groove or a rut. And we don't even know what habits are creating complexity in the first place. So how can we change it? So let's do a little exercise together to look at our habits. So here's what I'm going to do. I am going to put a number up on the screen here. It's going to be a 13-digit number. I want you to catalog that number when I put it up. I'll only leave it up for 5 seconds. And then I want you to be able to repeat it back to me. Are you ready? Are you ready? Okay, here we go. 13 digits. See if you can remember this number. Catalog it in your mind. Here we go. Okay, who can repeat it back to me? 3, 1, 2, 6, 4. Very well done. And guess what? That's what you were going to do too, wasn't it? You guys are my rock stars. I didn't say you couldn't take a picture. I didn't say you couldn't write it down. 312-642-7027-981, right? I know, I've seen it before. That's okay. So, and that's also my childhood phone number, just a hint. Okay, so the first part, not all of it. So very interesting, right? That's the habit we want to break. Most people, every hand should have gone up in the room, right? Because you write it down. You assumed that you couldn't. What's the simplest way that you can actually get something done without it being illegal or cheating, right? Right? Changing habits. So one of the things we want to think about is where complexity comes from. Now, here's what you think, and then here's what it is. What people, most people will say, well, you know where it comes from? Regulations. Trust me, yes, you have regulations, but then, of course, we also deal with pharma. They think they have it the hardest. I deal with intelligence agencies. They think they have it the hardest. Everybody has a level of hard. That is very true. But then it's the things we put in place that become complex. Oh, that org structure, that chart, the different silos, the different units to manage regulatory issues. And then what do we put in place? Tactical complexity. When I start asking people, what really bothers you? Meetings, reports, emails, right? Policies, rules. Those are more within our sphere of control, not our sphere of influence. But then the biggest thing that drives those, why do we make those meetings? Why do we have those emails? Why do we create those reports? Risk, fear, power, control, and trust. And if we can help change those habits so we can get more comfortable taking a risk, so we can have less fear, then simplicity starts to happen. So what are the behaviors? Really, as leaders, this is the question for you. What are the behaviors that we want more of that will make simplicity and less of because they create complexity? And I want to play a quick video. This is Joni Ive, chief designer, you've all heard of him, at Apple, who really talked a lot about how Steve Jobs, when working with him, forced him to get in a brand new habit to better focus. And I'm going to play a video right now.
Can you name sort of 3 sort of life lessons you took away from working with him?
This sounds really simplistic, but it still shocks me how few people actually practice this. And it's a struggle to practice, but is this issue of focus. Steve was the most remarkably focused person I've ever met in my life. And the thing with focus is it's not sort of like this thing you aspire to or you decide on Monday, you know what, I'm going to be focused. It is every minute, why are we talking about this? This is what we're working on. You can achieve so much when you truly focus. And one of the things that Steve would say, because I think he was concerned that I wasn't, he would say, how many things have you said no to? And I would, honestly, I would have these sacrificial things, because I wanted to be very honest about it, and so I'd say, oh, I said no to this, and no to that. Mm-hmm. And he knew that I wasn't vaguely interested in doing those things anyway. Mm-hmm. So there was no real sacrifice. What focus means is saying no to something that you, with every bone in your body, you think is a phenomenal idea, and you wake up thinking about it, but you say no to it because you're focusing on something else.
Pretty good. How can you say no to something? That was one of the things that they talked about. How can I say no today? So I'll tell you one thing that we do with organizations when we teach Killing Complexity. And one of the techniques that we started doing, it grew organically out of work that we were doing, is creating a code of conduct. And this is something we as leaders can have with our teams to say, what are the things we want to do more of and less of? And a good code of conduct only has like 3 or 4 statements, and it has some more of and less of. Let me tell you the ones that people come up with most, and you are welcome to steal, or shall I say leverage these. Right? It's never stealing, it's leveraging things. Here's number 1. You say, I will, this is what you're agreeing to do as a team, because we all are in it together. I will eliminate redundancies and unnecessary work whenever possible. Right? I have permission to do that. I'm expected to do it. I get bonused based on that. I will not create false urgency. Not everything has to be done in 24 hours. Number 3, I'm going to use clear, jargon-free language when I communicate. I don't need to sound smart. I've got the trust of everybody. I'm going to keep my emails, documents, meetings, and conversations short. I was with CVS yesterday, and one of the things they started doing was no scroll emails. Either you attach it or you pick up the phone. Shouldn't be that long. Number 5, I'm going to limit the amount of information I need to make a decision. Because a lot of times, it's funny, people say, what are your biggest issues? Meetings and emails. But when you really dig down to it, it's decision-making, or frankly, the lack of decision-making. I need a little more data. Just a little more data, just a little more data. Number 6, I'm going to empower others to make decisions without me. And maybe here are the kinds that are okay. I'm going to make information available to others, unless it's illegal. Right? Let's use it. I don't need to protect it just because I'm worried about my job or I think it makes me feel more important and powerful. That's a big issue, especially in a lot of banks we work with, to be frank. And number 8, I'm going to say no, and it's okay for me to say no whenever possible. Now, as a little side note, we had done we worked with a business unit at Pfizer, and here's a watch out for you. He said, everyone wanted to say no to meetings, so I said, let's say no to meetings. And of course, then everyone was saying no to meetings, and people were getting offended. Right? That's that watch out of, be careful what you ask for. So until the boss did it and said no to a meeting, the dominoes didn't start to fall. So again, sometimes that behavior, you know how you go to the middle of the onion there? If you don't set the tone, people aren't going to do it. And you're going to have to help them get over that issue. Of course, he said too, he made it a point that he wanted people to say no to his meetings as well. Like, that's okay, I'm not offended. Okay, this is your code of conduct. Which things would you love to have more of or less of? What would your statements be? And here's the last one. I would like you to become your own chief simplification officer and empower everyone on your team to do the same. No more meetings that should have been an email. So think about it. If you were your own chief simplification officer and you empowered other people to do it, what could you do? And I'm going to tell you a couple of my favorites that are really quick wins. I think you could kill stupid meetings. So Sprint said, we love killing stupid rules, but you know what? We're going to make, this is when Dan Hess was there, he had his top leaders. He picked a few of the mavericks, and he said, I want you to do a meeting audit. You're going to kill 50% of your meetings. And they were like, what? So they went in, and they did an audit in those groups of every meeting they did. Now think about that. If you were to write down every meeting you had, like recurring meetings, ad hoc meetings, quarterly, monthly, annual, you know what I mean? Write it all down, and then some kind of ranking of which meetings are valuable and which ones aren't. Which ones could we do with a different frequency? Which ones could we just eliminate? They eliminated, think about this, 18% of their meetings in that group. That's everyone getting back at least 1 to 2 hours of their time each week, right? Killing stupid meetings. The next one I love, which is called NNTR. And this was a group out of Canada. I loved this. They said, you know those emails that you send around as a leader? That's really just an FYI. FYI, I thought I'd pass this on. And then people keep emailing you back like, thanks, got it. You're like, right? They were so tired of getting that in their inbox. They're like, how do we stop this? We don't want to be rude. So what they did on those kind of FYI emails, they typed either in the subject line or in the body, they led with NNTR, no need to respond. Because then if you respond, everyone's like, really? So that cut down their email traffic by quite a bit too. Like little trick, big change. And then the last thing I want you to think about is really the best part that's happened within Google, which is, yes, they have bureaucracy busting meetings, but they've established cut the crap committees. And these are informal, elected volunteers that within a group, like I'm too busy, I'm not gonna sit on my own cut the crap committee, but I'm happy to have a couple of my team members do it, and they are in charge. It is their job to come back to me and tell me what crap we're gonna cut. And so they know they are empowered to come back and tell me where the waste is so we can make space for the work that matters. So I want you to think about, because I have to wrap up here, my time is up. I want you to think about this. How are you gonna get to the work that matters? Because that's what's important. Not mundane, but meaningful work. So think about it. If you actually killed one meeting a week, how much time would you get back? Right? If you actually shortened a meeting from 60 minutes to 45 minutes, how much less stress would people have? Or if you were able to focus on really important things, how much more valuable would you feel at your job? So when you leave here, I hope you will kill some stupid rules. Maybe you'll try and kill some stupid meetings. You cannot kill stupid people. That is a red rule. Red rule, right? But I hope that this will help you get to the work that matters. If you do have some questions, please email me, lbodell@FutureThink, or I'm going to be outside here afterwards, and I'd love to hear which tip you're going to try. So go kill some complexity. Thank you very much. Thank you.